So the question then, after that, fella, what we have to ask ourselves is whether we're victims or really we're culprits or perpetrators. I think I'm really a culprit. My kids always tell me I'm always on phone, so it's a big issue for many of us. But let's look at this. We know this has been trending over the last 3 days, if not the whole week. Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe, according to report, has been holding talks with negotiators from South Africa over his future after he was put under house arrest following the military's intervention in the country's governance just midweek. The army had said the action wasn't to topple Mr. Robert Mugabe, but was only targeted at criminals around him. Well, in the following Newsdesk report, we explore what may have triggered the toppling of Africa's longest-serving president.
It's not a popular uprising or an international community trying to influence change. It is primarily a power struggle between two factions of the ruling ZANU-PF. Robert Mugabe has been in control of Zimbabwe since the country gained independence from Britain in 1980. There's been an ongoing rivalry between First Lady Grace Mugabe and former Vice President Emmerson Mnangagwa over who will succeed the aging president. But last week, President Mugabe sacked his Vice President, who, like Mugabe, is a veteran of Zimbabwe's liberation war. This act was seen as a plan the president hatched to favor his wife over one of his closest allies. This seemed to have provoked military leaders who seized control on Wednesday.
We wish to assure the nation that His Excellency the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe and Commander-in-Chief of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces, Comrade R.G. Mugabe, and his family are safe and sound, and their security is guaranteed.
The First Lady is said to have fled the country to neighboring Namibia. Envoys from the Southern African Development Community have been negotiating a deal over Mugabe's future. During his 37-year rule, there have been increasing calls for the president to step down as the country continued to experience economic crisis. Zimbabwe's opposition leader Morgan Tsvangirai says Robert Mugabe must resign.
In the interest of the people of Zimbabwe, Mr. Robert Mugabe must resign, step down immediately in line with the national sentiment and expectation.
President of Guinea, who heads the African Union, Alpha Condé, has also warned the AU will in no case accept the military seizure of power, asking the army to return to the barracks and return the country to constitutional order. But this directive doesn't seem likely to happen anytime soon, as reports suggest the military are now trying to remove threats posed by First Lady Grace Mugabe and her allies. Though the situation remains tense, as many people are unsure how events will unfold in the coming days, the atmosphere in the capital, Harare, is said to be generally calm.
And we have to get to the heart of this matter. We want to experience from Zimbabwe themselves. And, well, as we do that, we have to speak to a colleague journalist with the New Day newspaper based in Zimbabwe. Richard Chitsa is on the line. Good morning to you, Chitsa.
Good morning. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Right. So the first question then logically will be, what's the current situation there?
The situation is we have an uneasy calm, as it were. Everybody is going about their business, except a few European embassies mostly have shut down their offices, but mostly businesses have gone as usual. And the biggest university in the country, the University of Zimbabwe in Harare, has also postponed its examinations that were scheduled to have started. Most of them have been pushed further. And President Robert Mugabe still under house arrest along with his wife and two of his biggest cheerleaders, Jonathan Moyo, Higher Education Minister, and Sylvia Kasukwere, Local Government Minister. President Mugabe is expected, and there is anticipation that he might appear in public for the first time today at the graduation ceremony in one of our universities, the Zimbabwe Open University. He is expected to appear there. By the way, he is chancellor of all universities in Zimbabwe, so he has to keep students from every other university in the country, particularly public university.
citizens would have a lot more to say, and we've seen responses from various sections of citizenry across the globe when we've had some insurrections, etc. But
yeah.
What would you say is the public opinion among the ordinary Zimbabwean about this situation, if not a takeover?
Zimbabweans want President Mugabe to go, whichever way. However, he is allowed to go, whether by hook or crook, by force or peaceful means. They don't care how he goes, but generally Zimbabweans want President Mugabe to go. But they also unsure what will happen tomorrow. There is a history, and Zimbabweans are aware of history of military coups across Africa are not a picnic. They're not as easy as they are, as they would want people would want them to be. But also Zimbabweans don't know what tomorrow holds. So there is that uneasiness around that, in as much as there is not as much euphoria around President Mugabe's departure. They want him to go. But the idea that it's the military that is causing his departure now, yes, some kind of an uneasiness around citizens.
For how long had Zimbabwe been feeling this way? I mean, just perhaps having positive response to the phrase that we want Robert Mugabe to go?
It's a delicate situation, but Zimbabweans have to be patient, and I think they are patient now. And what has happened is the party that President Robert Mugabe belongs to is triggered, from what we hear now. The impeccable sources in PF tell us that they have triggered the process to have President Mugabe censured or removed from power at the party level. And on the other side, a parallel process is going on now, and we understand the Speaker of Parliament has recalled the Parliament to begin to reconvene on Tuesday next week. And an impeachment process has been underway. An opposition member of Parliament has written to the Speaker of Parliament to give a notice for an impeachment motion against President Mugabe. And this year, this is what we are getting. It is support from the ZANU-PF members.
Does it mean that the ZANU-PF party is that much popular among the populace?
Not really. Not that ZANU-PF is popular, but what is happening, the departure of President Mugabe has brought Zimbabweans together. And you can see it through even statements coming from opposition parties, including the biggest opposition party in the country, the MDCT, under former Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai. And Tsvangirai himself addressed the media yesterday, demanding that President Mugabe should resign. He should accept that he goes. Because according to Tsvangirai, he says Mugabe has always been an illegitimate president because he stole the 2018 election.
Well, we're getting towards wrapping up our discussions. But at the end of the day, we know that the international community, especially the sub-regional community or regional bodies, would have a lot more to say. And they've been saying a lot. So we're being told that some negotiations are being undertaken between the Mugabe family as well as the takeover entity of faction. At what level are those negotiations or discussions?
They involve directly President Mugabe on one side and Commander Zimbabwe Defense Forces General Constantine Chiwenga on the other side. So it's at that high level, very high level. And also from South Africa, the Minister of Defense and the Minister of Intelligence sent by President Zuma to come and mediate. And the local cleric, Father Fidelis Mkonori, is also involved, kind of playing midwife in there. So it's at a very, very high level. So Mugabe has to cut a deal, and you have to cut a deal in person.
Okay. Mr. Mugabe is said to be a great Pan-Africanist. He's the only one, according to what the literature, or it depends on who you will be reading from, is said to be the only Pan-African who is standing up or had been standing up to the West. So he's a very polarizing figure. Would you want his legacy looked into, or his rule looked into, and perhaps those punished, who should be punished for it, or perhaps also you want his legacy to stay?
Unfortunately, Africans, and particularly in the region and across Africa and the diaspora, they have a very clean image of President Robert Mugabe because of his belligerent stance against the West, as it were. But Zimbabweans don't care what the West does or thinks of Mugabe. Zimbabweans don't care what South Africa or what Ghana or what Egypt thinks of Mugabe as a Pan-Africanist or otherwise. Zimbabweans want a leader. Zimbabweans want a leader who brings democracy to the country. Mugabe has not been that type of leader. He has been a brutal dictator in Zimbabwe. He has brutalized Zimbabweans and violated a lot of human rights. Zimbabweans have disappeared without a trace under Mugabe. Zimbabwe's economy is at its worst, at its weakest, and one of the weakest in the region. But in 1980, when Mugabe took over, the Zimbabwean dollar was at equal measure or at equal footing with the British pound. And now it's way, we don't have a currency anyway. So Zimbabweans don't care what that Pan-Africanistic issues. They don't care about Pan-African issues. They care about their food on the table.
Well, we do understand all the concerns that you have as a citizen, but you also should know that, say, citizens in Libya, Somalia, Syria, etc., all had same concerns. They also wanted their leaders to go, but their countries were in tatters. So perhaps you should be mindful of that as well. But Richard Chidza, thanks for joining us. And Richard Chidza is a journalist with a Harare-based newspaper, the New Day newspaper, based in Zimbabwe. So that'll be it for the discussions, but we'll do a lot more discussions on other programming on the channel concerning the stalemate or the impasse in Zimbabwe. You can trust JoyNews to be on the beat.